Reactor online. Sensors online. Weapons online. All systems nominal.
Alright guys, welcome to episode number 4 of War Room. Tonight we're going to be talking about different mechs and weapons and how they affect the game. Let's start off as usual with some introductions. Magician, take it away.
Hello, I'm the Magician. I run Hunter Die as well as one of the co-leaders of Steel Jaguar Gaming.
Alright, Maverick, if you're done getting TK'd by some Atlas.
I'm actually just kicking ass right now. We just stripped all the stalkers. But hey, I'm Maverick. I'm from the infamous Chaos Legion. Probably the most notorious group in MWO. So thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, no problem. G-Man.
Hey, I'm G-Man, leader of a Cerberus Company in Credit and JSOC Battalion.
And not Magician, you're here as yourself tonight.
I'm here as Sace, finally, and not Magician.
I know, right? It's great.
Or the not Magicane.
not Magicane, that's what it was.
Sace with Team Remnant. I'm an officer. I also run the podcast General Highway for Lights.
And Titan Osis.
Hi, I'm Titan. I run lights in 228th. I do a lot of the competitive drops with them.
Alright, so before we do anything, I want to start off and talk about the Be a Hero fundraiser. If any of you guys have heard about it, it's a really cool opportunity to raise some money for some hospitals, play some games, stuff like that. So, yeah, you guys should go check it out. I'm going to drop the link in chat really quick, and check it out. It's for a good cause. It can be for your own good cause. Just thought I'd make mention of it. Other quick mention is Proxys is fully up and running. As you can see, a lot of the planets have been taken, and it's fun. It's a cool league. Anybody that isn't signed up should check it out. But from there, we're going to move into the primary topic tonight, which is Maverick's mech tier list. So, Maverick, why don't you take it away? Tell me, what made you want to make this list?
Most of it came from a lack of information for new players to find like a good reference source for what mechs were particularly useful, not useful. As many of you know, MWO is actually quite a grind. It takes a lot of time to get the C-bills to buy mech, and for a lot of players who aren't competitive players who don't have the time to actually invest into the game, choosing one good mech that's going to give you a good perspective on the game, which is going to make you want to play the game more, which is make you want to invest into the community. It's a potpourri. Not many people know what mechs are good. There's a lot of conflicting information out there. So I wanted to give something back to the community, and this is how I've gone about doing it.
And so how did you come up with this list? Obviously you list a lot of contributors and stuff like that, but was it all done solo queue, 12-mans, 4-man groups, assault, conquest? Like where was your metric for when you did this testing?
Actually, what we did is we co-opted a few guys on the administration list of the NSA, and they hacked into Magician's TeamSpeak, and we stole their information. Actually, no. Thanks, Snowden, if you're out there in Moscow. Just a shout out to you. Thanks for the good work. No, what happened is that, as you know, in the Run Hot or Die tournaments, thanks to Magician and all the hard work he's done for that, there's a lot of discussion within our team, Chaos Legion, a lot of discussion between teams as to what are good mechs, what are not good mechs. And what I've noticed after watching a lot of games, participating in a lot of matches, contributing to theory crafting, listening on some really, really great people, namely like Gauss Dragon, Christoph, Taz, a lot of smart guys in Chaos, was that there was a trend to the same mechs that we all determined to be good, bad, strong, not strong, so forth, and an app for certain roles. And what was really interesting, as we played more and more matches and Run Hot or Die, became pretty obvious that other teams were coming up with the same perspectives as we were, because we were basically having mirror matches. I mean, it was not uncommon to see, 4 DDC or 2 DDC Atlases, 2 Cataphract 3Ds, 2 Centurions, and 2 Ravens. I mean, there's a reason for that.
And so this was all done, well, not obviously all done in competitive matches, but it was done by not only you, but units outside of Chaos Legion. And so did you actually talk to people, or did you just look for trends in matches?
It was a combination of the two. A lot of it was done on my own. In fact, there was a lot of controversy just within our own team. I mean, it wasn't 100%. The team's like, yeah, go ahead and make this information public. You don't see a lot of teams going out there with what they consider to be the best mechs and so forth. This is stuff that is also controversial. I mean, people within my own team didn't even agree with it. But it was a starting point, and there's a guy by the name of Elements who plays League of Legends, and some of you guys might know him, and he's a support player. He used to play for Team Curse. He's actually a fellow Canadian, and when I was starting to play League of Legends a couple years ago, I had no idea how to play the game. No clue whatsoever. But I came across this thing called the tier list, and I started watching his videos, and it made a huge impact on me. I got to learn the game a lot quicker. The guys who were teaching to me now had a foundation in which the game and explain what was good, and within like 3-4 months I was on a 1500 team in season 2, which, if you guys don't know, that's a pretty high ranking season 2 team. So I just went ahead and basically copied him. I mean, you could say that imitation is the greatest form of flattery.
All right, well, something I want to do is I want to go through with everyone, and we're going to kind of go through the list. I hope all of you have it. If not, I'll send it to you. And just talk about the different mechs and the different choices and what that's like. But one last question. Did you do any of this testing? Was this all no restrictions except for weight limitation?
The basic foundation which I've used is really Magician's Season 1 of Run Hot or Die, which was that there was a specific drop jet that was 2, 2, 2, and 2. And I still, to this day, believe that this is a very good basis for judging these mechs. As you add in things like tonnage limits and so forth, you don't have to choose light mechs, medium mechs, heavy mechs, or assaults. But in a format where it's 2, 2, 2, and 2, or now that we're playing 12 versus 12, 3, 3, 3, and 3, we actually are forced to choose mechs within each tiers. And consequently, I think this is a no-holds-bar for the best mechs within each category. What's the best light mech? What's the best medium mech? What's the best heavy mech? And what's the best assault mechs? And let's take those.
Well, perfect segue. Let's talk about the actual list itself. So you've broken it down into 3 categories. You've got tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, superior, satisfactory, and disadvantageous. So I think we're just going to go through the superior mechs. And I am not a light pilot, so I'm not going to pretend to have any glory knowledge on this one. But up top, you've got the Jenner F, the Jenner D, and the Raven 3L as the 3 best light mechs. And I just kind of want everybody to go around and discuss what you think about this. I'm going to start off with Titan, because I know he is a light pilot. Is there any other mechs you would add there, or do you think any of these mechs don't belong?
Tier 1 is obviously fine. I know the 5D gets run quite a bit. Well, I suppose that might be just on certain restricted competitions and whatnot, but like if you look at something like Run Hot or Die, the Jenner F is going to be used almost every time. 3L for ECM, it's 35-ton mech. I don't know, I really like the deaths now recently since of the speed tweak upgrade, bigger engines and whatnot, but other than that, I think it looks fine.
I wouldn't argue with that tier 1. I mean, the F and the D are bread and butter. I would say I would put the 5D up there, simply because it brings the ECM less tonnage and the broken hitboxes that are still a problem with spiders. Choke those AC-20 shots.
And so with the increase in the capability of modules like Airstrike and Arty Strike, you guys don't think that the Jenner K with the extra slot has a place up there?
We talked about it last week on my show, and some thought that maybe it would be able to pull in with those extra slots, but really, it seems like every team is just throwing the arty strikes and air strikes on every mech. 1 slot, 2 slot, unimproved, it doesn't matter. It still does work.
Yeah, 400 damage in a single shot's pretty awesome. Okay. Do you guys, I guess, G-Man, you have anything to say about that?
Looks pretty good. As far as the K goes, I would say basically it comes down to bringing an extra streak or 2 medium lasers versus an artillery strike, and doesn't seem like much of a comparison to me.
Yeah. Well then, I think we should move on to medium mechs, because with the introduction of the Shadowhawk, this has obviously changed. You've got all of the Shadowhawks on the top tier list, along with the Cicada M3, the Centurion A, the Hunchback 4P, and the Kintaro 18. You still feel that the Hunchback 4P is viable? Maverick? Sorry.
Yeah,
direct that at anybody?
You know, the one thing about the 4P is that it's got a good range. A range of 540 max. It's still nothing to sneeze at. And good pilots can do quite well with it. So yeah, I think it's still viable. It just again depends on what rule you're taking it and which maps. Certain maps I think are a lot better. If you're able to choose your maps, you might want it maybe for say Alpine. For some of the colder maps in particular. For some of the hotter maps, it's not so much, and then you'd want to probably take like a Brain if you're looking for a brawling build. Again, you know, each person has a different perspective, because some people say SRMs don't work for them. I don't personally have that issue, but I've got ultra low ping at 30, so my SRMs always seem to hit and do damage. But other people don't like SRMs, so they might say I want a laser boat, which is a bit more consistent. Yeah, each to their own, though. It's going to be up to what the competitive teams decide works best for their teams. But I do think it has a role still.
I wouldn't argue that the 4P isn't a tier. The Scent, as a Scent pilot, I just do not feel that the Zombie is doing the work it needs to with the SRM registration. I know you don't have a problem, but I've seen drop-offs of huge amounts of damage, not to mention the improved hit detection, and now you can't hold that center core as ridiculously well as you used to be able to.
I have noticed a lack of Centurions. It seems to be the Wang more, just because you can take the AC-20 lately. Zombie scents are still a thing, but with SRMs the way they are right now, they just don't seem to be as prevalent as they used to be. Because I remember that was like the only medium mech for a while.
It was, and it was the only really viable one, but sadly I would say that, in my opinion, it's a tier 2 these days.
Magician,
especially with the Shadowhawks.
You guys still run quite a few of those, don't you? What do you think about them?
Yeah, the 4P.
I was going to say, well, the 4P or the Centurion.
Well, okay, so I'll start with the 4P. The 4P is a really solid mech. It's a fast. It has the pinpoint damage. Can rip out lights, especially if you're in a lighter drop. Even if it's in the heavier drops, that's a good medium to take because it does a lot of damage. It can still harass, but it can also sit back and poke fairly well. Yes, the Shadowhawk with the jump jets. Everyone's running either PPC, AC-20, or ER PPC, and it's a very good mech, but that's also 5 tons more, and that can change up your drop to XR. The Hunchback 4P might actually be a little bit, it might be more efficient in certain ways because, like I said, it can really assist with the lights, fights really well. As for the Scent, we're taking it, but less so. It's good if it's mixed in with the right type of drop tech, but you can't rely on it. Like back when it was the 500-ton drop, people would take, I think it was 500, but it would take 8 cents and then 4 Jenners. But now if you take 8 cents, 4 Jenners, it's just not as good. But you mix in, say, some 4Ps in there, and now you have that leg ripping off ability during the initial part of the engagement. You're not so reliant on SRMs doing damage, which can depend a lot on the pings and who you're facing. Yeah. Now, as for other mechs on this list, just looking through it, I think some teams like the Trebuchet 7K, such as SW Swords Kentaurus. They like the AC-20 mixed in with there. It's a good, tonnage efficient brawler. You can do the 4G as well with the Hunchback, but the Trebuchet hides that ballistic just a little bit better. You can't hit it from so much wide angles. But otherwise, I think that's pretty much spot on. I don't like the Kintaro 18. I mean, I think it's a good mech. It has some good uses, but tier 1 to me is like one you can use in almost all cases. So I would Kintaro and the Cicada 3M, which I
Yeah.
I just don't like the Cicada 3M anymore. Even though it has ECM, I just don't like it. It just gets ripped apart by almost like a Jenner pretty quick.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
so easy to hit.
You used to see Kintaros a lot before the Phoenix package, actually, because Kintaros, you could run, 5 streaks on a Kintaro. It was fast, it was agile. But now that Shadowhawks are out, it feels like Shadowhawks are being taken above Kintaros every single time. Because they're faster and they have jump jets, and 4 streaks with 2 mediums is equal in most people's opinion. So, I don't know. I haven't seen as many Kintaros lately. Titan, you're a light pilot. How do you feel about which one are you more afraid of when you see it, Kintaro or Shadowhawk?
If it's a Kintaro 18 with 5 streaks, I try to avoid that. But I mean, that's honestly one of its only purposes, in my opinion. Shadowhawks, by far the best mediums. I am not afraid of cicadas whatsoever, regardless of build. And yellow wings are probably, I would say, I would put those in tier 1 instead of the 9A, just because SRMs are trash right now. Just because
AC-20s are so good.
Yeah, I played against Goat from Luna Wolves, and him and one of his teammates took us on in a blackjack and a Yenlo with verse 3 or 4 lights, and they just ripped us apart because they're good aim with AC-20s.
AC-20s do a lot of work.
It's my opinion on it.
Seems to bring the most AC-20s anymore, and the 2D2 can bring an AC-20 and 3 streaks with BAP if you want.
Oh god, is that really a build?
Yeah, we run it in our team. Or you can run 4 if you don't have an ECM
Holy shit.
issue, but
I didn't even think about that. AC-20 builds I always run on them are twin medium lasers, because then you have something that doesn't run out of ammo, but...
I like the AC-20 PPC build.
Oh yeah, I've seen that before too. Shadowhawks they're awesome, I have to say.
Every variant, I wouldn't put them anywhere but tier 1.
Yeah, solid on that one.
I would say the Kintaros are deceptively... They're good at stripping armor off more than just lights, especially with SRMs being so broken right now. Streaks are a good option.
Mm-hmm.
And really, all you have to do is look at teams like QQ that run Kintaros as brawlers. They run masses of them. And they'll run something like... I know they ran a couple Kintaros and a Boomjäger with LBX and machine gun just to crit hunt when they strip off armor.
Does that work?
Depends. Good thought, though.
Yeah, it is.
LBXs weren't broken.
Do any of the Kintaros have ballistic slots?
No.
No.
Okay, yeah, I think that's one of the main problems.
Ballistics are so hot right now.
They really are. UX
Yeah.
are out of control.
Ever since the Gauss rifle change. I hate to admit it, but it's kind of been cycled out for now.
Yeah, it's way harder to use in jump sniping. On a stationary mech, you can use it pretty effectively, but it's still it's not like the glory days. Well,
Yep.
the painful glory days when that was all you saw was Gauss rifle PPC. All right, any closing words on mediums? We can move on to heavies. I don't feel like there's going to be a ton of conversation about heavies.
I really would say that maybe one of the trebs, I know the boom treb is just... You're seeing BSK, and BSK has come back so strong recently, and they run the boom treb and various other trebs, but I would put it up almost in tier 1, I think.
Boom trebs
The right hands.
they kind of came out of nowhere too. Like it was nobody ran trebs, nobody ran trebs, nobody ran trebs. All of a sudden, everybody runs AC-20 trebs, and it suddenly became a meta build in competition.
Yeah, and I think a big part of that is also that they're so good at killing lights with those AC-20s.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, they're fast. They've got a more hidden AC-20 than a hunchback. Yeah.
They've got arms you have to rip off.
Yep. And they're skinny too. They're sideways. They're hard to hit.
Well, my question then is why are your lights getting into a brawling situation with mediums?
Anymore, you can't get near anybody that has ballistics, at least. I'll still brawl. I mean, a pack of lights can still strip down a Guitaro's legs or pick down certain things like Atlas's, but anything that's rocking UX, AC-20s, I'm not going near it, especially in a Jenner.
I would say in a 550 drop, there comes a point where everybody is kind of together.
You see, that's where when you start to implement tonnage limitations, shows the limitation of the list, because there's a lot of nuances to the list. But ultimately, once you begin to change things around, change the rules, no list is going to be absolutely perfect. And I think that's pretty obvious here when it comes to the mediums. If you have a lighter drop jet, you're going to change things around. If you have a higher drop jet, you're going to change things around. Depending on the strategies, depending on how your lights play, depending on how your assaults play, that's going to affect also what mechs you choose as well. I would argue a lot of things that engagements with Kintaros, engagements with AC-20s, that's something that light mechs need to be very, very careful that they get the right information before they commit to something. I see a lot of this, and I've been watching some of the videos, and I keep wondering to myself, why are these guys engaging without getting all the information for the drop commander to make a decision? There's some very aggressive plays, but man, things can swing around really rapidly. Likewise, I often see guys out of position from their team, so they have no backup. So that if there is someone like a very slow AC-20 medium mech coming in on them, why aren't there snipers in position to actually take advantage of a light, immobile, AC-20 mech that's now engaged their lights? This is all parts of strategy which I've seen, but it's interesting to see how strats have changed. Not been the same as when I was playing with Chaos Legion, and I still wonder, are we adjusting the mechs in our minds that are good or bad and making them better for a lack of good tactics, or are we having better tactics and this is really the result? I mean, you have to ask yourself what influences what. What's the chicken or the egg in this scenario?
That's a good point. I mean, you hypothetically, with enough skill and good enough tactics, you could compensate for running, all tier 2 mechs against tier 1s if the tactics are good enough and the skill is good enough. But I would say that the capability of mechs is what determines what's the best. Like, obviously, jump snipers, AC-20, like dual AC-20 mechs, stuff like that. That's kind of the top of the list, because just the pinpoint amount of damage you can do. And I mean, everybody else feel free to interject with their opinions on this.
I think a big part of it is also like heat efficiency, how much you can add for an alpha and be able to run around the battlefield depending if you're planning on brawling or sniping or whatever. Just the ability to keep shooting over and over and over. Just being able to fit, like if you're running a PVC AC-20 Highlander, you can fit like 19 doubles on that. So you have the heat efficiency to keep shooting most of the match.
Sorry, anybody else? Like, how do you guys feel that there's a lack in tactics, or?
I feel great. I mean, you'll see teams come out with completely different playstyles, mech loadouts, and anymore, you're not just seeing the Cataphract Highlander Jenner loadout run. Now we're throwing back in the Ravens. You're seeing Trebuchets, Shadowhawks now all over the place. I said QQ earlier, but they really do run Kintaros, one of the best I've ever seen outside of just light hunting.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Any last thoughts on mediums? We can move on to heavies.
I think mediums need a buff overall. They seem to be a little bit weak.
And so, that's actually one of the things I want to talk about. What do you feel is lacking from those mediums? Like, how do you guys? What would you do to improve them?
I would put in lower tonnage drops, because mediums are extremely tonnage efficient mechs. They are not very good against Highlanders. Highlanders can blow off whatever their weapon slots are pretty quick. When you're not facing a Highlander or a DDC or a Stalker, you can be extremely effective. I mean, you'll take down heavies fairly well. I think a Hunchback 4P against a Cataphract 3D is going to be a fairly close fight if the Hunchback uses terrain properly and its speed properly. So I think the main problem people have is the high tonnage drops. So one of the things I've looked at with our HOD, I was talking to people the other day, the highest tonnages drops for our HOD. I'm like, this is just too heavy. When you're running 8 assaults, 4 lights, that just is, to me, that's insane. I know some teams like it. a lot. Deviate was a big fan of the high tonnage drops. I know Vrangent Guard's big fan of the high tonnage drops, but that throws out the medium as being a useful mech. But when you get down to the 540 tonnage drops, that's where the medium shines, as well as in around the 600, maybe low 700. The medium still has a place, but you get beyond that, and it loses favor.
Yeah, that makes sense. What would your ideal tonnage drops be? I mean, you can still fit. It's 540 in Run How to Die, right?
Well, there's different. It starts at 540, then it goes 620, 700, 780, 860. So it might. All right. So our had season 1, as Maverick was talking about, we had different class-based drop decks. So it was 2 all. I'm forgetting now, but it was like 1-1, 3-3, 3-3, 1-1, 1-2, 3-2, and 2-3, 1-1, or I don't know, whatever it was. But those were really good at spreading out what mechs people took. And I think that's still the way BattleTech maybe should be played. I think the tonnage way only works if the mechs are fairly... it only really works if role-based warfare works extremely well. But I would say anything under 700 tons is probably a good way to spread out between lights and assaults.
Yeah,
with mediums as your focus.
The 700 drop is still heavy. Like, that's still mostly assaults, couple lights to cap, etc., or harass. Well, so you think limiting chassis over weight would be better?
I would love to do a combo, which was one of my plans originally, but just looked like that might be too complex. Where you'd have to take, say, 1 light, 1 medium, 1 heavy, 1 assault, and your tonnage would be 700. So that you have those little bit limitations, but you also have a tonnage limitation. So maybe a blend of that would work well. And I know with the matchmaker, when they do it, they're going to have a tonnage limit, which is going to really affect the leagues unless private matchmaking allows us to set a different tonnage limit. Mm-hmm. So we'll be affected a bit by that, but we'll look at all the options, and I think that other leagues have done a good job at doing different ways to make the game competitive and make mediums useful.
Yeah, and 3-3-3-3 drops are actually fairly interesting because you run into mechs that you don't normally see. So I do like the idea of forcing mediums into a game.
There was an interesting perspective that was brought up by Jaeger a couple weeks ago when we were talking about this, and I said to him, like, hey, I mean, if you had the option with a certain tonnage limit, would you run mediums? And his answer was flat out no. He was like, I'd just take the weight from the mediums, put it towards like a heavy, and grab an assault, like a Highlander, and grab another Jenner. The Jenners and the light mechs are so good at what they do that they basically can replace what a medium mech can do. So our light's overpowered, or our assault's too powerful, or our medium mech's just not powerful enough, and they're underpowered. It was an interesting perspective and something I totally agree with, because I'd rather have a Victor out there at 80 tons with jump jets than I would say, Atafract if I could. I mean, you get a little bit extra armor, a little bit, maybe a bit better alpha depending on your build and whatnot. And all you have to do is get an extra Jenner, and, wow, Jenners are awesome.
Yeah, Jenners are kind of king right now. It's still not back in the days when Ravens were the only light, but they are still very powerful.
One thing's interesting, though, if you go into Smurfy and you load up a bunch of different mechs, from light to assault, you end up doing about 5 DPS is about where most mechs are at. So in that case, what separates a medium from an assault is the assault has the jump jets and can get behind cover fairly easily, and it can shield maybe a little better, has more armor to take damage. But if you get into a full-out brawl fight, a lot of the times those 4Ps or those Scents will have about the same amount of damage as your assault mechs, as long as you're constantly firing in that type of an encounter. So it's not as if an assault mech is dishing out a whole lot more damage. It's just so much that it has more abilities to sustain that damage, or to receive the damage in turn and not get his weapon stripped off as quickly.
This is where good hitbox design on the mechs. I think what's his name? Who's the lead designer? Paul's posted recently. They're going to do a hitbox reevaluation. But part of balance, part of what making a good mech isn't just what weapons it can take, isn't just whether or not it has jump jets, which is course. But really, it's the hitboxes. You know, how good are these hitboxes? How good can you torso turn and arm twist to actually shield yourself? You know, how vulnerable is your center torso? And where are these weapons, ballistic points, energy points, missile points, where are they located so that when we do shield, they're not being taken off right away? These are things that I don't think have ever really been noticed or considered in a MechWarrior game, and this is something that's probably brand new for MechWarrior Online to consider in designing a good mech. And how later mechs, especially when Climax joined the picture, which mechs are going to be good, which mechs are viable, and how should we actually balance mechs out? Because it's not going to be just simply what engine size, you know, what weight it is. It's actually going to be like how are the hitboxes designed, how are the arms designed, and how are the energy placements and weapon placements and all that contributing to the effect? How do all these things effectively contribute to the mech itself? These are things that we hope the developers are going to take a strong interest and consider when they're actually balancing the game, and not just like numbers like 5 damage and 3 heat and 2 critical slots.
So if I mean, I'm going to ask this question of all of you, what would you do to balance out mediums? Because obviously they can't be as fast as a light, and they can't hit as hard as a heavy. So what would be that sweet spot short of limiting usage of other mechs in play to make mediums effective?
Well, like Mav was saying about the hitboxes being so important, I think that's a big reason why the Shadowhawk is so good, and I think that's why the Centurion was already so good. So, if they can just adjust the hitboxes on the other medium mechs too, they could pretty easily make them all just as viable as the Shadowhawk is now, which I think it's just as viable as some heavies are, and even in puck drops.
Imagine though if the Shadowhawk was not about the same size of an Awesome, and it was actually in between a Jenner and a Cataphract in size. It would not be very easy to hit at all.
No.
So jumping around with that thing would be a lot of very, very good mech, and that's something you could do. You could just shrink them down. That's what people have been saying. They're like, no, we can't do that. It doesn't matter tonnage how big they are and stuff. And all right, maybe they want that logic, but it doesn't. It would work. The mediums would work so much better if they were just smaller targets.
Absolutely. I mean,
Big
people
size.
complain about spiders and their hitboxes and they're broken and so forth, but the biggest issue is that they're tiny. I mean, these things are so tiny that the calculations on these things are so quick. You know, you're getting probably like decimal places to figure out if it's going to the right arm, left arm, or if it just missed you. But it's the size. This is what's causing the issues. It's the size and the speed that these mechs are moving. And if you consider balance as being hitbox size, as being the ease of someone to actually target you, that's part of the balancing equation.
Siri also just mentioned in chat buffing SRMs. That's a very good point. They're kind of trash right now.
Yeah.
But with like the 9A, you used to be able to pack 3 SRM6s on it, and you could put a lot of hurt on some big mechs within a couple of seconds if you got close enough to them.
Yeah.
Its maneuverability. I would like to see ammo be changed up a little bit more. It really feels like bring any sort of punch, you have to really cut your ammo, which makes them short-term fighters.
But that would then, in turn, be a buff to assault mechs too, because then assault mechs would have.
On some end, yes, you could bring more on assault mechs, but at some point, you're bringing too much ammo. You know, they can put the tons in just somewhere else, but I think the ammo would be a huge boon to a lot of the AC-20 mediums we see running around, aside from being more maneuverable and smaller like Magician, which is probably the best suggestion. But I would like to be able to carry, you know, at least something other than 2 quick engagements in ammo if I want to bring an effective weapon.
Yeah.
But that's something too that balances off ballistic weapons, and it's important to remember is that, you know, ammo is like a ticking time bomb. If you don't use all of it and you're sitting around and you get hit in the wrong spot, you're out of the game. I mean, that's a lot of explosions if it does happen. And that's a balance feature for ballistics, so ballistics don't get out of control as well. Ammunition limitations and the fact that they can explode. I think people are right. SRMs have needed a buff for a while. This is probably the issue that caused Chaos to like stop playing way back. SRMs got nerfed and PPCs got buffed, and I think the developers sat in their on their heels, deciding if they wanted to listen to the competitive community, to people who actually use these things, and at a very, very high level. And it got left for a long, long time. And unfortunately, what we see now is a community that's used to sitting back and sniping, not brawling anymore. And if they do brawl, they're not being rewarded for all the tactics they've used, for all the risks they've taken. So yeah, SRMs need a little bit of buff. I think the missiles could go a little bit faster. I think they should get to their target probably about 20% faster. That might actually help the hit detection. I think also, I think the damage should be increased, not massively increased. I wouldn't go back to 2.5. That
was kind of ridiculous.
That was a bit too much. I'd give it a small buff. Like I'd say go to 2.1, 2.2 max, and see how that goes.
Wasn't 2.5 when they also had the splash damage though?
That true. That was the issue as well.
Yeah. So I feel like if they went back to 2.5. It'd be interesting to see if without the splash damage they were still effective, because they feel wildly underpowered now with the problems with hit detection and so on.
They need a fix before they need a buff. They need to register on max, but really SRM should be that option for stripping off armor willy-nilly, not just popping a torso or something else.
Yeah. They definitely can't go back to where they were though, where they were just
What are they at now?
2.0.
2.0. But I just mean they can't go back to the power that they were before, because before you could kill an Atlas with like 2 volleys from a Splat Cat.
So
and that was kind of ridiculous.
That's also because of the
I mean,
overlapping splash damage. That's what made them ridiculous.
Yeah, but also say so. I mean, let's look at that point of the game when they're really powerful. So there was a drop between SJR and DV8, where we took AC-20, K2 AC-20s, A1s, I think it was Sense, and Raven 3Ls at that time. DV8 took 3Ds back before PVCs had Super Bus, and they took large lasers, and they took a range setup, and we fought on Forest Colony 8v8. That game was super tight, like the whole way, and we fought that several times, that type of a setup. When we got in, we were powerful, but it was still harder to get in. So it's okay to be super powerful as long as you can do significant damage while you're at range. It's just that you have to be rewarded for being able to get close. There's no reward right now still for getting that close to people. So until they can change that, you're not going to have that old style bounce that we had. So I would say even if you had SRMs at 2.8 for how SRMs work right now, that would hurt a lot if Ascent got in on you, but that means that you're going to have to play the type of game. If you're going to take a Highlander, you can't be sitting at 400 meters from Ascent and popping at them and waiting for them to come over the ridge. You're going to say, hey, I have 600, 700 meter weapons. I'm going to sit back at 600, 700 meters against that Centurion if I want to be winning this match. And like right now, a Centurion can basically rush a Highlander starting at about 300 meters, and the Highlander will still win.
Yep. I completely agree. That's a really good analyzation. Yeah, that's a really good point. I feel like that would help mediums a lot. I didn't even think about SRMs as when it came to mediums and a way to improve them. I just felt like it feels like there's always been kind of a cry for an upgrade to mediums, though.
They really are the redheaded stepchild. They're too heavy to fill the scout cap warrior role, but they're not big enough or strong enough to fill the hard hitting take damage role, except for when the Centurion was completely broken.
Yeah. Well, that conversation led in a really good place, so I'm glad about that. But heavy mechs, we good moving there?
Yeah, the 3D is the Cadillac of mechs.
Yeah,
it does it all.
Let's just all agree 3D is really good. Anybody think that 3D is bad? Come on, I dare you.
What's a heavy mech? I mean, really, like the heavy mech if you want to talk about a mech that's fallen out of favor, you'll see probably more medium mechs than heavy mechs right now. True. It just the Highlander is so much more efficient for 20 other tons. It's insane. I mean,
yeah, it's all Shadowhawks and Highlanders now.
Yeah, the 3D's still good, but that's the only heavy I think anyone is taking except in Merrick.
Yeah, we've seen some boom Jaegers and real big boom cats, things like that. I'm seeing a lot more double AC-20 builds.
I'm gonna put this out there, but I would not be surprised, if a few teams, if they get their tactics and their teams are really well organized, especially if SRMs get buffed and stuff, that you won't start to see more of this sort of direct fire support, like the Jaegers come up there, because it's very hard actually it's very hard actually when you have a limited number of jump snipers to take out a mech that has good fire support. You're taking so much damage in return. The problem right now is what we're seeing is that everyone just takes Highlanders and jump snipes. And like Magician pointed out, there's no reward for getting in close. But if some of those little variables get tweaked, just a few little things, this whole group of mechs could explode right open, because all of a sudden you've got like AC-20 guys, you've got your AC-2 direct fire support guys. You got maybe the old 2X Mini Atlas that would just come in. The Rhines might actually become useful. The Dragons will still be useless. They'll be like, the little brother to the Awesomes who turned awesome.
When knockdowns are back, everybody will be Dragon Bowling again.
But it's just going to take a couple little things, and man, this whole thing could open wide up. And I'd be really interested to see what happens then. But as it stands, the 3D is so good. I mean, it's. Do you want to just create a god tier, as someone suggested, and put the 3D there, and everything else becomes tier 1, 2, or 3? Because it's so hard to even like put the other mechs there. I mean, I'm trying my best, guys. I'm like really. I want to put something in tier 1 along with it. Like, I'm really stretching it, and I've seen great players play it. Some other great mechs. But I mean, I'm stretching it to put anything else other than the Cataphract 3D in the tier 1 by itself. Everything else there should have a giant bracket. It's like, I need to put something in there because it would look really stupid and silly not to have anything else there. Because this is really a competitive tournament tier list where we have teams organized around these mechs. But what else would you want to take?
And throw out
The
most
K2
of the heavies.
The K2 might actually be one that can go up there. It's still a very strong mech in the right circumstances. And
Now, what loadout are you running? A K2 are we talking here?
Dual AC-20s.
well, it's still two AC-20s.
The double, yeah.
Yeah.
Is
Especially
the,
in a light drop, like in a 550 or a 540 and run how to die.
Even 675, the Boom Jaegers and the K2s can do work.
That's true. They can. Jaegers deserve a spot in tier 1 if nothing else than for the dual gauze, dual AC-20 capability.
Is the Jaeger DD the only one that can fit
No,
two AC-20s?
they can.
No.
They all can.
Okay, any reason for that in tier 1 other than the other ones?
The DD just packs all the ballistic slots, which is really what you bring a Jaeger for.
Yeah.
So it epitomizes Jaegerdom.
Okay.
So it also has better torso twist or arm movement or one of those than the A, which
Plus, we all like seeing double Ds.
When we get the chance. So Magician. Holy shit. You mentioned that you thought heavies were kind of dead. What did you mean by that? I mean, I know
I
what
don't
you meant.
understand
I'm
other
trying to
than
get
if
you
you
to
look at-
elaborate for the show's purpose.
Alright, so there was a recent drop between SDREU and VRGD. I don't remember the tonnage. VRGD went, and I just looked at it after one of their other drops and went, yeah, they're going to go 6 Highlanders, 6 Jenners. And that's what they did. They weren't messing around with a couple mediums and then a couple heavies with mixing with their Highlanders and Jenners. They were just saying, forget it, we're just going to go Highlanders and Jenners. And that's, I mean, I still think the medium is useful depending on the tonnage, but the heavy is not, it's just, it's a strange thing because if I look at the scores in our games when we're practicing and stuff, the 3Ds can kind of be around where the Highlanders are at for the most part if it's a slow-paced engagement, because then they can manage the heat fairly well. But when it's a full-on engagement, it doesn't have the. If you're doing, say, the 2 BBC 2 AC5, it doesn't have the heat reduction that you want. That makes it useful in that situation, unlike the Highlander. So you're doing 20 tons more for a Highlander, and then you can drop down to a couple more Jenners, and with the 6, it just seems to be a better way to put a drop deck together. So that's where I think the heavy is losing favor, just because because the Highlander is so powerful.
Mm-hmm. I actually have to say I don't like using my 3D as a jump sniper anymore. I prefer it on. I mean, I play Merrick mostly for competitive matches. That I prefer, on matches when PPCs are restricted, twin ERs and an AC-20 with a standard engine. Because you can run that, you're very mobile, and you pack a punch, but at the same time, you don't have to do that jump sniping game. You can hit people from far away if you want to, but you can also get up and brawl if you need to. So that's what I prefer my 3Ds for. I've been hating jump sniping in them lately.
Well, that's
no,
also
go ahead.
another interesting point because again, you see how the limitation of this list works. All of a sudden, we see tonnage limits imposed. Oh well, let's just move our tonnage towards the heaviest part of the game, which is the assault mechs, and take the lighter mechs and so forth. And I pointed this out actually in the videos. For those of you who actually watched the videos, there's actually a lot to the videos. And one of the things I constantly point out is that mechs that are at the heavier range of their class tend to perform better than those at the lighter range. This explains why the dragons and the quick draws tend to be lower, and why the cataphract tends to be up high. The Orions, meh, whatever. But if you apply that same principle of thought to the whole class from 0 to 100 tons, you see a weighting towards the Highlanders, the naughty tons, the jump jet versions, and so forth. And of course, the lighter mechs, you're taking the heaviest of the lighter mechs there. So that sort of logic actually applies not just within a class, but it applies across all 4 classes too.
One of the things I thought was interesting, you put the Thunderbolt in Tier 2. I actually haven't played any of my Thunderbolts yet, because I've been busy. But what made the Thunderbolt a viable mech?
It's just a basic map. There's one that has jump jets, and it's actually heavier than the quick draw. So you can actually run like 2 PPCs, and it's actually quite heat efficient. It's quite fast and so forth. So it's kind of like the base level. It's mobile, carries a decent loadout. It's got jump jets. I mean, that's basically the criteria for any base, decent mech that you can compare it against. Jump jets are just so good. There's another variant which I think is fairly decent, is that you can actually run a couple ballistics onto it. And again, you're just looking for a baseline mech. We're not saying these are amazing mechs. We're not saying these are what you probably even play in your competitive leagues and whatnot. But they're decent. I mean...
I'm going to give you a bullshit on that one.
That they're decent?
The Thunderbolt is trash. It has... It looks good on paper. It has weird build-outs. It's not a solid mech in any way. If somebody can find something feasible to do with it, please show me, because I've been looking.
Well, let's start off with the one with jump jets. You could easily run 2 PPCs. It's got an asymmetrical loadout. You can throw on a large laser, a couple of medium lasers onto it. It's decent. I mean, that's not bad for the tonnage right there. People talked that they could do that with the quick draw, but this is actually 5 tons heavier. So jump jets already make it more viable than a Cataphract 2X. Makes it more viable than the Firebrands. It definitely makes it more viable than anything that's ground based. Jump jets right there.
I would not. Even with
jump jets are powerful, dude.
You could slap 30 jump jets on that thing. I will take a Firebrand any day over that ugly.
Ryan Steele would take those 30 jump jets and he would like DFA you like from the moon with that thing. Okay, so don't even go there with jump jets.
Well, this brings it back to the hitbox discussion though. Like Thunderbolts are fucking big. Like they are wide motherfuckers. And how do you get around that? Especially when in a competitive match everything is going to be so focus fired.
Oh man, people forget Jaegers are fragile beings, man. Like you get a Jaeger way out of position, you give me time to focus it. I think there's one variant, which is the one I absolutely hate, which I think is a tier 3. And this guy is like dual AC-20s right on me. I can torso twist, so you won't get a dual AC-20 to my chest right away. No good pilot's going to take it right off the bat if he's aware. And you just take I think it was like 5 medium lasers and 2 large lasers, and you can actually, especially if you're cool shot, you could do like 4 alphas, and if you're not torso twisting perfectly as a Jaeger, your torso is going to go blown right off. So Jaegers are, as much as you want to say Jaegers are awesome, they're also fragile beasts, and that's one of the weaknesses of the Jaegers. In fact, a lot of the guys, who claim their AC-20 mechs are awesome, I don't fear them a lot because a lot of times I just know where to go, where their weak points are. And any mech that actually has a really, really good, recycle time, especially with a high alpha, you gotta be careful, man. You gotta be really, really careful. So I'll call your bullshit and raise your Orion Steel with 30 jump jets.
The Jaeger will always be more viable. Weapon placement, weapon loadout. Even if it is a glass cannon, I will give you that. The AC-20 Jaegers fall apart. Legs, side torsos, wherever you want. But it doesn't matter because the moment they get ignored, they're dropping mechs left and right. It's not
But
a
they shouldn't
tear
be
down
ignored.
here.
That's the problem. Like, if they're being ignored, that's a team issue.
Well, everything is perfect. If I catch a Jaeger out of place, if I catch a Jaeger alone, if I do this to it, the issue is battles aren't perfect. And really, the Thunderbolt has yet to find a place where it shines anywhere other than the fucking shit heap.
You got jump jets, dude. I don't know.
Honestly, if we're just talking about a jump jetter with PPCs, mediums, and SRMs, I mean, I wouldn't actually want to bring it, but I might prefer a Catapult C1 over the Thunderbolt, actually.
God, I'd never even thought about that. I haven't seen anything but a K2 in a competitive drop in so long. It's unbelievable.
I miss
I miss
the
'em.
A1 days.
Yeah, they were fun, man. I bought catapults for the Splat Cat and the AC-20 Cat.
They were like Leroy Jenkins with like giant balls of SRMs all wrapped in one, and these guys would be Leroy Jenkins. They'd be going down these fights, and you'd be like, "Shit! If I don't take this out right away, I am screwed." And they were great mechs. They were
best
high
was
risk,
when
high reward.
The Awesome had the giant hitbox, and you could just fire from like anywhere on the map, and as long as you were within AC-20 range, you just one-shot Awesomes. Those were the good days. That was
Those poor mechs.
God, that was before double heat sinks. Ooh, let's not go down this road. I'll just get all nostalgic. Alright, any last thoughts on heavy mechs, guys? Alright, Killer. Assaults. So we've been mentioning the Highlander this whole time. I think we all agree Highlander is pretty fucking good.
Beautiful mech.
Yeah. I agree with all of these tier 1s. I don't think I've seen an assault other than these in a competitive match in a long time. The Misery is, I agree, the best stalker. Hands down, just because of that ballistic.
Yeah, we've been seeing a lot of those in competitive drops.
Any thoughts on assaults? I mean, do you guys... So we mentioned this earlier when we were talking about lights and mediums, but do we think that... well, not do we think, we're not a single entity. Do you guys think that assaults are overpowered? Do you think that assaults need to be lowered to make room for things like that those medium mechs? Or do you think that they're in a good place and other things just need a buff?
I like where the assaults are. As a person who doesn't play assaults and plays against assaults, I know all the competitions have tier tonnage lists, and when they do it in drops, they bring what they need to bring for the weight. I wouldn't want to see them downgraded in any way. I'd rather see a medium become smaller, more maneuverable, SRMs work, and I would like to see a return, really, of the assault brawlers. The SRM packing Stalker and things like that, other than just the Highlander Super Mech and the Atlas AC-20 medium laser beast.
There was a little while, I think it was right after they changed the Gauss rifle, no, it was right after they implemented Ghost Heat, before people started using only Gauss PPC, that there was like brawling, and it happened, and I just was so happy all the time because I got to brawl again. But now it's kind of fallen the way of the dodo. Well, at least it seems. You still see some brawls, especially in those lighter comps, but that's more of a light mech clusterfuck than an old-fashioned like Atlas brawl.
675. Sometimes you get a brawl.
That's true.
Like 700 range. A lot of teams tend to bring mediums. Then
675 has fast become what I consider almost one of my favorite weights.
yep, I enjoy it.
There's enough there to play around with where you can bring the bigger guys if you want to, front load like that, or you can roll a mass of mediums. I know BSK rolled out on us last week with 9 trebuchets, which was not a fun map on a canyon with snipers, but...
Oh, I bet that would be rough. Yeah, that doesn't sound fun at all.
it was not.
I don't envy that match.
Assault Mech's list looked great, though.
Yeah. Yeah, brawling is fun. It's it'd be interesting to see what they could try and do to limit the amount of sniping and increase the amount of brawling without like completely killing a weapon system or completely making a weapon system overpowered.
I would like to see a hitbox improvement for things like the Stalker and the Atlas. I know it sounds weird, a light pilot saying I want them to be better, but it feels like it's just so easy to matchstick the two of them.
That's a good point. The Stalkers, not recently by any means, but I remember Stalkers back in the day being hard to take off. Well, no, that's not true. I'm full of shit. Never mind. Disregard that. Worst host NA. But no, Atlases are very easy to potato. That's completely true.
Yeah, but if you get a good Atlas pilot, in a DDC, it's still a viable build. It can do a crap ton of damage with good support from a team, and if you wade right in, if you're point blank brawling, that's a fearsome mech.
I would completely agree. I love that list is right on the money. I would just like to see the Atlas and the Stalker feel a little bit harder to neuter for what you're bringing tonnage-wise. I want them to feel a bit more scary. I will never go near a Highlander in a light. If I see an Atlas, though, I'll tear it up. I know those torsos are going to go quick.
Really? I just go for the... Usually everybody's running 733Cs, you just go for the one side torso.
Yeah, the ballistic torso, and it's gone, and then you don't have to worry about it? Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to go after a full health one, but
No.
I usually leave that to
But a
my bigger
Highlander...
teammates.
Would,
Yeah, the
they're
Highlander.
scary. They're really scary.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. 733C has both PPCs on the one side with the ballistics.
Well, it's interesting because I remember Ryan and Vils having a discussion about the Highlander versus light mechs, and one of the things they really brought out, which I thought was the key point, is that when you have jump jets, you introduce another dimension. You're not moving side to side or very limited up and down. You're having mechs actually go way up in the air, and essentially they're shouldering damage, so to speak, shouldering, which is a term from the Atlas days when you'd rotate your shoulders into things and your arms to take damage as you moved in. But you're essentially rotating damage from other parts of your body down to your legs, and so that's what makes these jump jet mechs, especially the jump jet assault mechs, so good. Because now you have to actually deal with the fact that it's not going to stay at level ground while you take out certain parts. It's going to jump up in the air and churn its back and its arms, and it's going to take a lot of time to take that mech out, and that's enough time for your team to get in and help them out. And that's what makes this Highlander 736 not just amazing because it has a great loadout, but it's also great because it's got a lot of armor, and to take off that armor while it's maneuvering around with jump jets, it's just really, really tough.
And so that actually brings up a good point that I want to talk about, which is the Highlander versus the Victor, and why the Highlander is still just so much better than the Victor. Because on paper it would, I mean, we obviously know why, but on paper it would appear that the Victor could compete with the Highlander. It can be faster, it's got kind of the same weapon loadout, but yet we don't see that many Victors. It's still just Highlanders. And so what do you guys think about that?
Arm-mounted weapons. It's all right there. I mean, it's a...
Well, yeah, the
But what
Victor's
about
arms are
what
pretty
about like
low.
the Dragon Slayer, which has the same ability to mount on one torso that the Highlander does?
Can't fit an Act 20. Used to be pretty good with a Gauss rifle, but hey.
I would agree.
I know some people are having some luck with the Victors, with the 2BBC AC-20, or some people like the 2-yard large AC-20, but why would you just take a 3D? You're taking the same armor as a 3D, you're barely getting anything out of it, because the higher tonnage... One of the problems is that when you switch from a 70-ton to an 80-ton, your engines, for the same engine size, you're not getting any more speed, or you have to upgrade your engine to get the same amount of speed, because you're using a higher tonnage mech, so you're not really getting that much more than a 3D out of a Victor, and I just don't think it's a good mech at all. 3D, at least you're shooting fairly high up on your mech, whereas the Victor, half your shots are going to the ground unless you jump very high.
I like the Victor. I don't think that the Highlander being better than it discounts it, especially when you're trying to, match into tonnages that are weird. And I think it does fill the same role as the 3D in a little bit different way. You can bring a bit bigger ballistic. There's rather mechs I'd see first, but I have no
Faster.
issue.
That's
It is
when
faster.
that's the time I always want to take a Victor or have a Victor in a comp, is when you need speed.
I never have an issue seeing a Victor. I just think there's other things that people should take first that are definitely more effective, but it has its place and it does its job decently.
The only time I've seen Victors used among, I would say, near tier 1 teams right now is in Merrick League when there's been no jump jets and probably no PPCs. That's the only time the Victor seems to see its place, because then you can fit the large lasers, AC5s. And other than that, it's not a tonnage efficient mech, in my opinion.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
It almost comes back to that. It's the low end of the spectrum for assaults. So there's other assaults that are better.
I would say low end of the spectrum for effective assaults.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the minimum tonnage for an assault mech, so.
It's still
But,
a great
I don't know.
beginner's mech. Not
Yeah.
speaking competitively speaking. It's still a great beginner assault mech. In fact, for new players, I'd probably say grab a Victor. It's a good all-round mech, and I'll let you do. You guys are spot on. It's got it has 20% less armor. It's at the low end of the assault mechs. Tons instead of 100 tons. You can look at it, think of it as a heavy mech or a light assault mech.
That makes sense. Do we want any more words on heavy mechs? Or, I mean, assault mechs? Jesus.
Hey, Magician,
Battle
have you ever
Masters are pretty terrible.
What were you going to say, Mav?
I was actually curious about Magician's tournament. Has there ever been consideration that if you had something like, not only do you have tonnage drops, but you actually have set drop decks. But for example, say if you were allowed to take 3 assault mechs and you're given a tonnage limit of, say, 200 and tons, for example, has that ever been considered? Because then you might see a variety of 80 and 90 and 100 ton type mechs.
Oh, having limited weight per class of mech?
Exactly.
I never thought about that.
I haven't really thought about doing that, though. That would make it a somewhat easier way than maybe doing a total. Maybe doing some. It makes those some limitations, but some tonnage limitations too.
You could do spare tonnage can only be used up by mediums. So
The
if
thing
you,
is
no, go ahead.
yeah, but the problem is people want to take certain mechs. People want to take the Highlanders. They're not. I would say if you make people take mechs they don't really want to be playing, and they make them tier them up, get them through all the elite and all that stuff, just so that because of the league's individual little rules, I think that players might get frustrated and not enjoy it as much. And that's something you always have to consider when you're doing the leagues.
There's
That's
a point I want to
an
put
interesting
out is, have you guys looked at that Proxys market that
Yep.
that Multi put out?
Let me get that up.
He
here.
actually does something very interesting with the mechs that are very popular. He actually makes the prices a lot higher. And if you guys look at the list here, it's an interesting. That guy's quite a smart guy. He comes with some really interesting solutions so that people don't just take the top mechs, but he actually puts the Highlander 733C as a mech that costs 18 million C-bills. And yet you've got mechs below it like the 732 and 733, which are 11 and 8.8 million respectively. The DDC, for example, is a $22 million mech, whereas the other variants of the Atlases are much, much less expensive.
The boar's
and-
head is the cheapest one.
And it's
Only
an
in
interesting,
Proxys.
yeah, it's an interesting economy type balancing act, which it's just something to keep in mind, at least for discussion's sake.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I did want to bring this up and I just completely forgot to. This works. It's a very basic economy, but it's based on how many people are buying what mechs. So it shows what mechs people want to use, but it also shows what mechs are completely undervalued even for their standing in your list, which is interesting.
Absolutely. And what's interesting enough too is I was really happy to see this because I don't actually work with multi. We don't talk very often, except when we run during game. But this is almost like an external validation of the tier list in a way. And I was like, oh, cool. Check this out. Look at the most popular light mechs. Okay, they're mostly Jenners. Then you've got Raven 3Ls, and you got the 5Ds. You don't see a lot of the other ones, but you do see the 2D, which is an ECM mech. And and this is purely from aside from the tier list. When we're trying to actually teach players, or help players get better at this game, there's a lot of fundamentals about these mechs which make them good or bad. And it actually gets reflected ultimately in what competitive players actually take. And one of the criticisms of the competitive community has been is that you're a vocal minority, or that the balance at the highest level games doesn't affect the rest of the game. But I think it actually does. And I think a lot of discussions that we're having balancing mechs, balancing out the overall chassis and so forth, this is good for not just for our competitive group, but also for the entire community. Because we see major imbalances in the mechs, we see major imbalances in the weapons, and when things are grossly out of balance, what ends up happening is you get a situation.
Oh, we lost you for a sec.
Oh, you're
Sorry.
back.
No, yeah, you're good.
And so I think what happens is that this type of discussions and these type of things are good for the entire community as a whole. And this actually points out which mechs are stronger and whatnot, but it also points out why certain mechs are stronger than other mechs and what balances would be really useful.
Honestly, kind of have an issue with. Well, not really. I mean, for Proxys, I love the idea he's going with. I would just like to see, really, just leagues where you let the meta run wild.
Just like completely wild, like no restrictions whatsoever. No weight restrictions.
No weight restrictions. Make it conquest, so they have some incentive to bring something smaller. But really, just force the meta down people's throats and let them force people to change.
Don't quote me on this, but I think Multi-Talented was going to do a league like that after Proxys was in a stable state.
I would hate playing in it, but
he mentioned wanting to do something like that. And again, this isn't confirmed. I'll talk to him and we'll talk about it on the next episode. But it would be interesting to see what that brings. Like no restrictions whatsoever, except for it's on Conquest.
We'd see Templars in the tournament for sure.
Well, I think Matt, sorry, not Greg, but Multi-Talented is working with Peef on this league, which, if it's anything like the one that came out from DV8, at one point there was things like no ballistics, rules like that, like very, very, I want to say strange rules, but like Merrick type rules, really, which was, I don't know, kind of interesting because they didn't really want to play under restrictions, but their league had the restrictions there, and so I don't know if it's going to be like that, or if, like you said, if it's just going to be open, take whatever you want. Whoever plays that night during that time catalogs wins. So I think what you'll see then is you basically see the 860-ton type drops, which is going to be the 8 Highlanders and 4 lights. I mean, that's
do you think
probably
you would even
one of the best metas.
Do you think you would even see that if it was on Conquest instead of?
Yeah. In a heartbeat.
Yeah, because even on Conquest, yeah, maybe.
Depends on the map you get is really the thing. Like if you get River City, doesn't matter how fast you are, you're still boned.
Yeah, or you get Alpine and you're running against 6 lights or something, you're probably going to lose. But other than that,
it just seems like we're trying to fix away from the meta for things that need to change. I'm not saying I'd actually enjoy playing in it because
I wouldn't necessarily say it's
by Highlanders.
It's fix away, it's variation away. Like people don't want to just play the meta all the time. Like you get that enough pug dropping and stuff like that.
The meta needs to be shifted a bit. I mean, I don't think it's like Jump Snipers or Learn Apocalypse or anything like that.
Oh,
but
I miss LRMs, kind of.
bringing the fact that balance needs to come to the forefront a bit more wouldn't be too bad. And I really would just like to see if it does come down to 8 Highlanders and 4 Jenners.
Yeah, it would be interesting. It'd be a fun experiment for science, if nothing else. All right. Well, I think the last thing I wanted to talk about, if we're kind of done talking about mechs, I was going to talk about weapons too, but we kind of included that in there, and It's already been an hour. But I want to talk to Magician. I want to go through just like an example of how your team ratings work, because we've brought it up a couple times now, and I'm just wondering, I think everybody's curious, what causes a team to shift up and down, how that works, what the ELO system is like.
Well, it's basically, I'm not a math genius or understand the ELO formula exactly, but it uses the USCF rating system, and if you look at the Harkness system, it's basically what it does. So in this system, if you have a rating difference, say of 0 to 24, if the person with the high rating wins, they'll get 16 points on their rating added, and the person with the low wins, they'll get 16 points added on theirs, or you have that deducted from your rating.
Okay.
So, for example, two teams really close play each other. Now there'll be a 32 total difference between those teams.
Right.
And as you get larger out on the ratings, so for example, if you're 200 rating difference, if you're the high person, you're only going to get, say, 8 points added. But if you're the low one and you happen to win, now you're going to get 24 points added to your rating. Whereas the high one's going to get 24 points deducted from their rating. And it takes it match by match. I don't do it drop by drop. I thought about drop by drop, but I figured I think the match is really kind of the basic unit that you'd want to use, and not just individual drops. So.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
I thought about using a weighted system, for example, in soccer or football, whatever you want to call it. They use one of the ratings uses a weighted system based on what the score difference is, and I thought about doing something like that. So if you win 3-0, that's more of a win than if you win 3-2, but that's kind of complex. Maybe sometime for the future.
Yeah. All right. I just myself, along with a lot of people I've talked to, had wanted to know what the system you're using, so it's just good to get it out there. I was gonna talk about the patch, but then there wasn't anything in the patch. I can't count on PGI to bail me out with content all the time, so that's fine.
Yeah, but it's a new game Tuesday.
That's true. We do get another one Tuesday.
Seismic sensor.
Oh,
it's a whole new game.
Oh, that's right. That's gonna be interesting. I'm not
Sneaky DDCs. There's a tier list for you. Sneaky DDCs all of a sudden. Also, they're showing up on you because you were moving and you didn't see them coming. Supposed to see them coming at 200 meters.
It will be interesting. Like I'm apprehensive but excited about it.
They did include that nice new hidden sniper spot on River City.
What?
They broke the citadel on one of the sides. You can enter into the building and shoot out from it without being seen.
Huh.
Yeah, some guy went in there. I had to go in after him and kill him.
I did not know about that.
If you're facing towards the open water inside that pass-through citadel, the left side, there's two different polygons you can step into and shoot out of. One drops down in the center, the other one drops down on the water side or stays up there, so you can shoot over to the base by the boat without ever leaving the building itself and being seen.
I had no idea that was a thing. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go do that right now. Well, yeah, the seismic sensor, that'll be something we have to talk about next week. The Hero K2, anybody?
Gesture?
Anybody
All
wanna
lasers?
say anything
All
about
lasers,
that?
no jump jets, no ECM? Pass.
If it has jump jets, I'll buy it.
It probably doesn't.
Probably not. But it would be, yeah. Are they really, is Public Shadowhawks next week too? Or is that another week after?
Should be. I think.
Okay. I have no idea. We'll see. Alright, in that case, I'm going to open it up to pictures, Jesus. Fucking Mav is getting me, like, waving his phone in front of I'm like, pictures? What? What's going on? Questions, chat, do you guys have any of them? What do you want to hear us ramble about for a few minutes? Anything?
I personally think BAP is OP. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I think it's way OP right now.
Actually? Well, I mean, how do you feel about ECM, I guess, is the real question.
I like ECM. I like anything that creates a mini battle within the battles system. People don't like the on-off thing, but I won't give away all the secrets I know, but there was ways around, like ECM to get locks with ECM on and so forth if you know how to trigger it on and off properly. But BAP's ruined all that because now you run generators with BAP, then they can have jump jets, they can have various lasers and so forth, and unfortunately the way the current balances work with streaks because they don't hit CT or they just overpower ECM mechs, specifically the Raven, the 5D, and the Commando, and so what I'm thinking overall, and this has to be fleshed out a bit, is that if you take BAP, which is a passive always-on type module, what are you actually giving up in order to take it? And for the generators, you're not really doing much. You take off a heatsink, but you're only running 5 lasers anyways. You'll change around maybe the engine size with the double streak version of generators. But you're totally screwing over ECM. So this whole idea of having lights being scouts and denying and getting information has been kind of removed from the game, which is unfortunate. Now, I'm not saying that ECM is perfect in its own end, but it definitely required light pilots to be good, not just with their scouting abilities or targeting abilities, but they also had to know how to counter information. Now you don't have to do that. You just got to have a guy with the BAP and jump in and take out your ECM mech. And the ECM mechs are not overpowered anymore. In fact, they're a bit weak on the weaponry. They're a bit weak on the maneuverability. And so, yeah, I think BAP right now needs a bit of adjustment. I think it brings a lot to the table for the exact same weight of ECM. You could change it, for example. You could make it on for only a specific period of time. You could make it way more. You could take it more critical slots, something like that. But I'd like to see the day where lights get a lot more opportunity to show their skills. Because light pilots have it rough. I think they're probably the hardest position in the team. They've got a lot to do. But, basically now, you don't have to really worry about ECM. ECM isn't part of the game. You basically find out where the team is. They're hunkered down like a bunch of buffaloes, and they snipe at you. You snipe at them. You try to get in, but what are you going to do? Your SRMs don't do any damage and whatnot. So ECM doesn't really play that big of a role. So I'd like to see ECM get some of the. And I think one of the issues would be BAP being a little bit less user friendly and maybe requiring that general pilots get 4 lasers, and so all of a sudden you've got a trade-off, and that's simply because of the way streaks are right now. But I think BAP overall needs a little bit of adjustment.
I think if you reduce BAP at all, ECM's going to run rampant again. I like BAP. If you have a lot of ECM, you cut the heatsinks, you cut whatever else to bring it on there, and ECM is really, it's an umbrella. It's amazing if you can get it on there, and forcing people to cut tonnage where they have to take BAP, I'm fine with that.
So somebody in chat actually asked, how do you guys feel about the current way information warfare works with tag and all that stuff?
I'd like to see more importance put on it.
I want NARC to work.
No, I don't want NARC to work. I want LERMs to work. I want LERMs to be fire and forget. And
I mean, it'd be cool if NARC worked, like suddenly all LRMs targeted or not seek that target with a lock until the NARC runs out. Like, that should be the technology available for a fucking missile tracking system sticking to an enemy mech. But it just seems that you see tags every once in a while, but that's only when you see an LRM boat, and you don't ever see LRM boats in competitive play. I can't remember the last time. What about you guys?
I've seen a few. I won't say that they were useful or good, but I've seen them. QQ likes to run LERMs, not so much anymore, but they are there. I've seen a LERM awesome, sadly.
Oh, the awesome. The look on Magician's face when I said LRMs in competitive play was great. He was like, ah.
I was actually trying to think if we've ever taken them in a competitive drop, and I'm pretty sure in the last year of playing competitive matches we have not taken them. And that's not to say they haven't had their time when they were useful, it's just we haven't played a match during that time. They've always been patched pretty quickly as soon as they became the OP thing. So
it seems like when LRMs are OP, they are really, really, really OP. Like, it's not like LRMs are slightly better than everything else. It's like, holy shit, an LRM-20 kills an Atlas in 2 volleys. That kind of OP. So
I think a lot of it's the psychological. You're getting hit by stuff over and over and over. Part of it, like the C1 catapult.
oh yeah, the one with
with 6 LRM 5s
six
or
LRM
something.
5s
That
in
is-
Artemis.
I hate and the shake.
It's not doing that much damage, but you just keep getting hit, and you're like, fuck.
Yeah.
You
Not
have to get
even
out of, break the lock or whatever.
It shakes you to the point where you can barely fight back anyways.
Mhm. Good thing we have the new module coming. He said with a grin.
I'd like
yeah,
to see.
it's here. Sorry, go ahead.
I'd just like to see some more useful modules. Now I'm just packing their arty strike and the seismic, but when seismic goes, I'm not going to know what to throw in there.
UAV, hands down.
Cap.
UAV
module.
is amazing, and the
Mhm.
cat module are great for lights. I love the UAV.
Yep, UAV.
Yeah,
Fucking-
Harry's right about the LRMs. There was that last time there was Lerm Apocalypse. We just got together a bunch of mechs, just tightened the pack, all with AMS, and rushed at them, and they could not hurt us. That much AMS, we were down to about 0 ammo by the time we got in on them, but they completely ripped out their missiles. So Lerms have actually never been a problem. They've only been a problem in open matches where people aren't prepared to face against them.
Yeah.
Or drop
It
a ton of
sucks when they would
AMS.
drop sky high right on your head, but as soon as you start taking AMS, it kind of reduced them as something. So
Yeah, and it really just chops them down. I mean, I know we had a match with QQ again, the only people I really see running Lerms in any sort of way, where we tossed AMS on the Jenners and put them between the two forces, and maybe one flood of missiles got through in the whole standoff and sniper war.
Mhm.
Yeah, we had a match where I think Versi mentioned it earlier in chat. We ran into a couple of LRM Centurions. That was pretty funny. So it created a lot more havoc than it should have.
Yeah. I'm actually
By havoc, you mean rage, right?
both, man.
Yes, both.
I know I've seen it. Who leads Blazing Aces?
Victor Morrison, I think.
Thank you. I saw him in a Lerm Centurion.
Give me
It
my
was-
Lerm Battlemaster air day. No, I'm just kidding. Don't actually.
I was using it
do
today.
that.
That's the thing. Like, if you look at the tier list, okay, we were talking about this stuff. We're talking about it's tier 1, tier 2. What's the difference? Like, if you look at the margin between the difference in these mechs, it's not that much, but it adds up as a team thing. So, for example, LRMs, they're not terrible. But if you're only doing 250 damage of spread damage with LRMs, unless you have tag lasers, because LRMs plus tag lasers at 600 meters are sick.
Mhm.
But it's not that LRMs are bad, it's just they're not as good as other options.
Right. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a good call.
And it's interesting when you look at the lower levels of play out there, just start a new account and you'll just see LRMs like going crazy out there. I mean, it's for the majority of people playing this game, LRMs are being used fairly often, and they can be easily abused at low levels of play. But the higher levels, like Magician's pointing out, you're talking about teams and people that are so good, and you're looking for every sort of inch, every sort of edge you can possibly get. And this is what you're seeing, is that they just don't quite cut it versus the direct weapons at this point. And they probably never will. And I'm okay with that. I mean, we're never going to have equality among all the weapons. I mean, we'll try, but there's always going to be some things. And then when it comes down to really, really competitive players, who can use terrain and whatnot to their advantage, direct point and click is really where it's probably always going to be at.
Adivia brings up the point, though, that's been my broken record speech for over a year, is that as soon as they have private matchmaking in place where we know what map we're going to be on, everything on balance gets changed. You're on Caustic Valley, LRMs become useful. On Alpine Peaks, LRMs become useful. So some of the reasons that weapons and mechs aren't as useful now is because we don't know what map we're going to be on, so we have to take things that are prepared to be on everything. But our DDC is going to be more useful if you know you're going to be, say, Forest Colony or River City. Yeah, probably a little bit more useful, especially if SRMs are doing the right amount of damage. So those mechs, those configs are going to open up, and you're going to see a much more variety. You're going to see all new meta happening, and if they just turn that on soon, that's going to throw everything. Everyone's going to have to relearn the game essentially, and relearn come up with new strategies, new builds, new drop decks. It's going to be a challenge.
We'll have to test out Narc 1B commandos, a bunch of LRM boats, because they're really fast now.
For science.
Or science.
I do want to. Well, I mean, I would want to keep talking about weapon balance, but we've been going for like an hour and a half, and I have a Chinese essay to write. And I can save that content for another episode when PGI forgets to put anything in a patch. So, unless there are any closing thoughts, I think we're going to kill it pretty soon here.
If I could just make one last point.
Yeah, go ahead, man.
Just when it comes to balancing mechs between jump jet mechs and non-jump jet mechs, I don't think PGI has realized just how much it's been affected by their whole implementation of the slope mechanic, and then also the way they've built these maps where you have these random invisible walls, random rocks that you get stuck on, and a lot of the reason why some mechs are less viable than others is because they're not as maneuverable. They don't have the advantage of simply hitting a button and getting over an obstacle. And I really, really hope PGI takes a good look at this sort of maneuverability and issue, because what we're seeing now is a lot of mechs that are really, really viable have jump jets, and the other mechs that don't have it get stuck. They get caught up. And with the best players, that's all you need is that moment, 1 to 2 seconds where you're caught and you're gone. Mm-hmm. And if PGI was really serious about balancing jump jet mechs versus not jump jet mechs, I think they're going to have to look seriously at this slope mechanic. And they're going to have to look at a lot of the maps and the way they balance these things out.
It's very interesting because slope mechanic was one of the biggest changes that was introduced with the least complaining from the community. And I think everybody really agrees with it. Like that was something that was really killing realism for the people that were in it for a sim, and for competitive play it really added another level to tactics. So I don't think there was anybody that was like super opposed to the idea of it, but it needs to be tweaked to allow for more streamlined gameplay and more predictable gameplay to prevent things like that from happening. Because if you get stuck on, there's a fucking lamppost on Crimson Straits that if you run into it, you get stuck. And if you get fucking stuck on that in a light mech and you're running away from an AC-20 Jaeger, you're just dead. Like there's nothing.
I think they fixed that.
The
really?
one light post that has
the one
collision?
light.
No, I actually talked to Matt Newman. He's on TeamSpeak.
Oh, okay.
Gave him the report.
Oh, okay. Never mind that. Because I remember it being there, and I remember running into it in like an Atlas one time and just being like, what the fuck is stopping me from moving right now? But yeah. No, I agree. That's a really good point. That is one of the biggest changes that led to the most...
Yeah, the statues and trucks over by Palace and River City are terrible.
Yep. Or the flood wall on River City by Epsy that you can't get up in like any light mech, even though it's just like a step.
Same with Crimson Straits. You've got underneath the platform, on just below. It's kind of like south of, what is it? Like southeast of D4 corner there. Mm-hmm. There's a little platform there. It's got like a tiniest ledge, but it catches you up on a lighter, or sorry, on the slower assault and heavy mechs. And then over on the far side by the ramp, you've got like another, by the water there, you can't get up because it's like a little step up. You got another position right by the tunnel. It's all these little, like, I mean, they're barely even at your toe level, but you're stubbing your toe on everything, and you're just like, I can't get out of here. Mm-hmm. I'm stuck, and God, don't even get me on Canyon Network. I've devoted like a whole episode to Canyon Network where, you can't get up to different areas, you can't get out of certain areas, so you're forcing the whole teams to play, one side of the map. And if you go the wrong way, you get stuck on a little pebble that you can't see. And they want us to report this in the drop zone area. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking to myself, guys, I mean, come on, like, it's really hard for us to just sit in the middle of a, match and screenshot, you're dead, and you're looking at the ground, all kind of zooming around. But this is, like, not fun. This is not good. Invisible walls are the big killer of video games, and they implemented an invisible wall without realizing it. But there must be a way they can get rid of these step-ups. Like, make it doesn't implement until it's like, I don't know, 3 or 4 meters, and then it happens. But something like that where you can at least get over certain little humps and stuff without even noticing it, I think would go a long way to smoothing out the gameplay and balancing off, slow assault mechs that aren't as maneuverable as the mechs with jump jets.
It'll be interesting to see. I wonder how the movement module is going to affect it. I wonder if that's going to actually make a difference, because it's 10% less deceleration, which in an assault mech might actually be pretty worth it.
I don't know. Honestly, I think that the problem is that they're treating mechs that are walking like they're on wheels or on treads. They're basing it off of inclines rather than actual changes in elevations per step. If they can just change that somehow, then that would probably fix the whole issue.
That's a good call. These are supposed to be more mobile than tanks. That's like the whole reason mechs exist. Anybody have any last thoughts? Alright, killer. In that case, let's bring on the shoutouts. Let's go backwards this time. Titan, start us off.
Oh gosh, 228th minute. Got a big team speak. A lot of 12-mans going on, even in-house. 12v12s. It's a lot of fun. Come check us out if you're interested in competition drops, etc. That's about it.
Alright, not magician. Sace, come on.
Then you're talking with a muted mic.
I thought you were just mad at me for calling you not magician.
Oh, no. It happens now in pug matches and everywhere else that I'm
It's
not
okay.
magician.
BSK still calls Xander with a Z now, so.
I think it should be Sace and not Sace.
Hold on, let me... Yeah, keep talking, go ahead.
Shout out to the Remnant. Great group of guys. And for today, shout out to the interracial 12-man. I don't think anybody here was in that. That would be 228th SWK, Remnant, and a couple others dropping 12 before this war room today.
Alright, and G-Man?
Yeah, my shout out go to Credit as a whole. It's a pretty great TeamSpeak server. You can get the info at creditnwo.com. Very open unit, and we have a couple competitive teams too, so come check us out.
And Maverick?
Quick shout out to the guys who aren't playing the game anymore. That's mostly the Chaos Legion guys, but watch out Star Citizen, because we're coming to you soon. 1 year, 300 days. But also shout out to the Lords and also to my boys in the Headhunters of Davian. And I credit them a lot with a great training program, because I don't think I'd be half the pilot I would be, or I am now, if I didn't have those guys around. So shout out to the Davian guys.
Yeah, I've been trying to get in touch with those guys, actually. I want to get somebody, one of their drop leaders on, so mention it to him next time you talk to him. Magician, not Sauce, Sace.
Not Sace, yeah. So, Arhad, NA playoffs starting this week. Look out for people to be hopefully streaming those matches. We'll be streaming our match against C-Reddit Expendables not this Monday, but I think, or next Monday, I think, next Sunday. And then also in the EU, SGR EU finished off the season undefeated, so they took that season 2. So, yeah.
Alright, and then I suppose I have to give the last shout-outs. Thanks, everybody, for coming on the show. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Thank you, chat, for being so civil today. Chat was fucking clean as a whistle. It was awesome.
Because Bave wasn't here.
P-freeze the way to be.
God damn it, I wasn't going to say anything. I was just going to say my chat has been nice.
Talking.
I really like doing this. I really like talking about the game. I really like contributing to the scene, and I want to make this game something competitive that we can all enjoy for a long time. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for supporting the show. Thanks for the great questions and all that stuff. And we'll see you guys next week. This is going to be the new time for the show. The show's going to, to the best of my knowledge, for the rest of the Thursdays this year and next year, there will be an episode of War Room on at 11 Eastern on Thursdays. So tune in next week. Feel free to follow me on Reddit, Twitch. I put the videos up on YouTube. They're usually up tomorrow. I've got a Twitter now that I'm trying to actually do stuff with, so follow me there, etc., etc. Plug myself. But yeah, thanks again for everybody coming on. Thanks to everybody who watched, and we'll see you guys next week.
Reactor online. Sensors online. Weapons online. All systems nominal.